This week on Architecture Unsolved, we investigate the Rietveld-Schröder house in Le Corbusier's Maison Cook in our ongoing investigation into the question of whether these two homes were designed in response to the hopelessness of World War I in an effort to create architecture for a hopeful future. Let's get into it.
The year was 1924. The First World War had ended 6 years ago, leaving Europe in post-war turmoil as nations were dissolved and new ones established. The Paris Peace Conference and the signing of the Treaty of Versailles had officially ended the war, but a new war began, the fight to rebuild.
A group of artists and architects had gathered together in the Netherlands, led by artists Theo van Doesburg and Piet Mondrian. They enlisted Gerrit Rietveld, a furniture designer at the time, and formed the artistic philosophy of de Stijl, also referred to as neoplasticism. Doesburg penned the major manifesto of the movement, the 14 Points of Plastic Architecture.
So what are the 14 points?
Doesburg's 14 points include 1. Form is the basis for development of architecture. 2. The new architecture is developed from the elements of the building, such as function, mass, plane, time, space, light, color, material. 3. The new architecture is economical. 4. It is also functional. 5. It is formless yet determinate. 6. Everything stems from the relationship of the opposites. 7. It is not passive. 8. It is open. 9. It integrates both space and time as elements of architecture. 10. The new architecture does not include symmetry. 11. It offers temporal and spatial elements. 12. It includes color, meaning art, and specifically painting is no longer separate from the architecture. 13. It is anti-decorative. This doesn't mean that there is no decoration, instead that color and decoration is a part of architectural expression and not separate. 14. Architecture is a synthesis of new plasticism.
This means Doesburg's new architecture is trying to create a new kind of harmony between the economic and functional necessities of architecture and the expression of new ideas about relationships of space, form, and color.
The philosophy of the style relied on simplicity and abstraction. Straight orthogonal lines created rectangular forms ornamented with primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. A recognizable work of art that perfectly exemplifies the style is Mondrian's 1943 Trafalgar Square. The geometry used in the style art suggests an idea of harmony and order, a hopeful response to the chaos of the World War preceding the movement, expressing its wish to remake society in the aftermath. Though the style movement came to fruition more than 100 years ago, design ideas today are still influenced by Doesburg's and Mondrian's theories. For example, the home screen of Microsoft Surface Pro and Apple's iOS 14 home screen.
Rietveld, an artist and carpenter who owned his own furniture factory, was enlisted by Truus Schröder in 1924 to build what would come to be known as the Rietveld-Schröder house. He had a strong background in art, largely self-taught. In 1917, he designed his famous red and blue chair, which was not originally red and blue. He later changed the colors to fit in with the de Stijl movement, and the chair is now an iconic example of de Stijl furniture. After her husband's death, Truus Schröder's desire for a change of scenery led to her collaboration with Rietveld on the house and furniture design. This partnership led to the two becoming romantically involved, and Schröder played a part in the de Stijl movement at his side. Unfortunately, due to Rietveld's later fame as an architect, her part in designing the Schröder house has largely been forgotten.
That's unfortunate.
It seems like a lot of times women in architecture and design have kind of been left behind and their achievements have been attributed to the men they work with.
Yeah, well, a similar example could be Eileen Gray in Le Corbusier.
Who's Eileen Gray?
She was a furniture designer who worked with her lover Jean Badovici to design their E1027 house. But unfortunately, the house was partially attributed to Le Corbusier, who didn't even have a part in designing it, and also defaced the house on one occasion.
Truus Schröder was a socialite and pharmacist, and a lover of the arts. For her, the Schröder house represented the independence that she, as a modern woman, could command. Women had only recently gained the right to vote 4 years earlier, and this independence, she felt, contributes to the hopeful outlook within the rebuilding of the post-World War I world.
Across Europe in Boulogne-sur-Seine, France, Le Corbusier began his first cubic house, and the first house that exemplified what would come to be known as Corbusier's 5 points of architecture, Maison Cook.
So let's talk about the 5 points. What are they?
The first is pilotis, using concrete columns as an open base to support the load of a building above.
The second is a lack of supporting walls, opening up the ground floor plan.
The third of the 5 points is a freely designed facade, separated from the structure of the exterior of the building.
The fourth is horizontal windows, breaking up the facade horizontally.
The fifth and last of the 5 points is roof gardens on the flat roof.
Le Corbusier's architectural philosophy came from his experience with the Cubist movement, which is quite different from the flat geometric style, which was born from it. Also focused on geometry is the way of simplifying forms into faceted geometry. Notable Cubist artists include the movement's pioneer, Pablo Picasso, and an example of the style can be seen in Picasso's 1910, Girl with the Mandolin. Corbusier himself was born in a French industrial town. He studied art in school and was forced into studying architecture by a mentor, stating that, "I had a horror of architecture and architects, but I accepted the verdict and I obeyed." He was largely self-taught and began designing buildings during World War I. Maison Cook was designed in 1926 for William E. Cook and his wife, Jeannie. Cook was a journalist moving to France to live with his wife. In the development of architectural elements within the Schröder house and Maison Cook, they are similar in an attempt to execute the rebuilding of a hopeful future. This new future would include not just the elite, but the middle class too, with a newfound fascination with prefabrication and factory-made components.
Both houses experience a similar climate. The Schröder house in Utrecht, the Netherlands, and Maison Cook in the Boulogne-sur-Seine suburb of Paris, though the Netherlands are slightly more cold. Though Maison Cook is 2 stories taller than the Schröder house, both take up around 1,100 square feet. The 2 buildings were both odd and new within their surrounding context, contrasting with the standard houses around them. The Schröder house has 3 separate facades, sharing a party wall with a nearby house. Maison Cook, on the other hand, was constructed between party walls, and so only has 2 facades, a more frontal composition. Both houses were situated in newly emerging suburban areas during the 1920s, with each house adjacent to parks. When it was built, Schröder House was located at the end of a residential terrace of upper middle-class homes, with a small road servicing as access. It can be approached 3 ways: on foot, from a sidewalk, or from a bicycle path. Maison Cook is accessed from a winding, tree-lined sidewalk.
Within a house, space is broken down into public, private, and service space. Within semi-public space, serving as a transition between public and private space. The Schröder house's first floor features a rather conventional organization, while the second floor features private space in a flexible open plan, which could be transformed using walls. A studio and workshop for Rietveld was located on the southwestern side of the house. In Maison Cook, the organization is less conventional. The second floor consists of primarily bedrooms, while the 2 floors above are public space. The service space is concentrated into one part of the plan. Both houses feature a diagonal accent in their plan, with Schröder House's spiral staircase suggesting the existence of public domain in the southeastern corner of both floors. In Maison Cook, this is evident in the northwestern corner on 2 floors, having been allocated for the service space.
Corbusier's fascination with route and procession is evident within Maison Cook. The approach to the house was a winding path, and the route ultimately culminates with what may be considered the goal of the house, a double-height living space located on the top 2 floors. Continuous circulation also exists at the same time. Several service areas have more than one door. Rietveld's spiral staircase heavily impacted the circulation within Schröder House, the counterclockwise spiral dictating how the circulation continued through the house up to, similarly to Maison Cook, an upper floor living space.
The Schröder house was built from timber frame, flat-boarded walls covered by cement. Maison Cook, similarly, was built from hollow concrete block and cement masonry. Both techniques resulted in homogeneous, flat-colored walls, indicative of the flat colors of the still and simplified geometry of Cubism. The Schröder house's facades almost pinwheel around each other, contributing to the feeling of rotation, while Maison Cook is a cubic prism. The revealed structure on the first floor indicative of one of Corbusier's 5 points, the pilotis, a round column. The fenestration system is where the two houses begin to drastically differ. Large wood casement windows open out from the Schröder house and contribute to the pinwheel shape. In Maison Cook, steel-framed casement and sliding windows make up the fenêtre de longueur, one of Le Corbusier's 5 points. Another of Corbusier's trademarks, the window feature an ABA, alternating rhythm between glazed side panels and opaque elements. The third of the 5 points that is represented in Maison Cook is the rooftop garden. Also presented between both houses is the pops of colors indicative of the still movement, red, yellow, and blue, and the carefully chosen cerulean blue, burnt sienna, cream, black, and green that came from his cubist ideas.
Although the two houses developed from two distinctly different architectural manifestos, the Schröder house being based on Theo van Doesburg's 14 points of a plastic architecture, and Maison Cook demonstrating Le Corbusier's 5 points of a new architecture, both houses devote themselves to a new outlook on geometry, as well as incorporating a pop of color to their design. Both architects included machine-made elements such as Corbusier's Thonet chairs, as well as industrially produced elements in his paintings. Schröder House and Maison Cook exemplify many differences in their architectural execution, but the inception of their design stems from the post-war desire to rebuild while looking forward to a hopeful future.